Hello, I'm excited to show you my project for my Permaculture Design certificate with Permaculture Women's Guild. This is going to be permaculture design in an urban setting. A little bit about me. My name is Luisa. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a 28-year-old pansexual woman who is Mexican and migrated to Canada 11 years ago. I hold an architectural technology diploma, but I've never worked in that field. Instead, I entered the service industry, and then I found a gardening gig. I have now been doing gardening for 3 seasons. I work for a gardening company that does designs, installation, and maintenance. So when looking for courses to further my education, I found the Permaculture Women's Guild, and the ethics and principle of permaculture really resonated with me. I'm also very glad that Heather is working on decolonizing the course a little bit, and recognizing that a lot of the permaculture strategies and techniques come from indigenous knowledge. With that being said, I want to acknowledge that this land was not originally, the land I'm in was not originally a British settlement. It was inhabited by many diverse nations of the First Peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and Takaranto is a Mohawk word, meaning the place in the water where trees are standing. I want to acknowledge that the deceitful, manipulative, and exploitative tactics used by the British to secure title over this land with Treaty 13, where 250,000 acres sold for what today would be $40. I mean, just consider this. Of Canada's 9.9 million square kilometers, reserve lands make up just 0.2%, and 89% of Canada is deemed crown land. So there's a lot of land to give back. It's essential to remember that Indigenous peoples are in a time of revitalization. That's a word I struggle with, that's English being my second language. They're in a time of revitalization and resurgence after the pressures of settlement and disease, religious indoctrination, and long-standing cultural restriction. By acknowledging the land and acknowledging its history, we are reminding ourselves of our human connection and responsibility to care for the land. But most importantly, of our responsibility to heal these wounds created by genocide and colonization brought by the British and French, with ideas that didn't only distort our perception of the First Nations people and their value, but also damaged our relationship to the actual physical land, making us think that we're separate from it, while at the same time making us think that we can own it. I don't believe we can. I don't believe we can own stolen land. I think we can only care for it. In Mexico, we don't yet very much speak of this. The portion of history books in my elementary school that covered Indigenous peoples was about 10%, while the rest was spent going over the superior Spanish Empire. And as a light-skinned Mexican, I have lived a privileged life, but as a human who is connected to this land, I feel the restrictions of the mind that I have that has been colonized, and it's a long process of unlearning, but one that I am honored to have a chance to work on. I'm located in the city, this is Lake Ontario. It's in Canada. It's close to New York, Niagara Falls. I live in Greektown, in this portion of Toronto, which is in the East End. The challenges and opportunities I see with this project is that urban dwellers have a big disconnection to nature that usually manifests in mindless overconsumption and as a sense of isolation from the community as well. So my vision is to achieve a feeling of abundance and confidence, and have this project remind urban dwellers that we are still connected to what we consume. My mission is to shift away from this consumerist and waste mentality by really honoring the abundance in our resources and environment. Gain independence from the system through connection and education. My mentor recommended that I read Permaculture City by Toby Hemingway, and his language really helped me break down my goals. He refers to mission as a purpose, and the projects to achieve that mission are your goals. Then the series of actions to achieve your goals are your strategies, and the methods to enact that strategy are your techniques. So I have broken down my goals in this manner in the next 4 slides, going through each of these. And in that process, I highlighted the techniques that appeared under more than one goal breakdown. These basically stack functions. They have multiple functions and further several strategies. So they could be powerful intervention points or become components to my design. My goals for related to the mission I have are to honor and utilize my resources well, to bring intention to the connections I have to my community and the connections I have to the things I consume, to become more independent and resilient, connected to nature, and to restore in many ways, restore land, restore relationships to myself and others, and to achieve more of a restored community feeling. In these slides, I have broken down my goals. You'll see I have my goals, then strategies for each, and then techniques, and then I have highlighted these. I will now skip to the slide in which I am summarizing my techniques that appeared under many goals. So these could be great components to my design. Techniques that go in the neighborhood could be to join community gardens or community centers, especially since I don't have a balcony or any outdoor space. To volunteer, engage in courses of many ways, dancing even, to help express myself, helping friends with their gardens since we don't have one, and engaging more with the Latin and queer community. At home, I would like to make more things from scratch, grow some food, and perhaps through a window farm, meditate, move my body, dance a little, close the waste cycle loop, reduce our processed goods. And these will all make more sense if you go through my other slides and see how my goals are broken down. It's a really great process by Tommy Hemingway, and I recommend it. One of the ideas that came up also as a way to honor my resources was to use my tattooing skills more. Since I do stick and poke tattoos, and it's a slower process than through machine, I get to spend a lot of time with my clients, and a lot of interesting conversations happen. It's a very vulnerable and beautiful space where I get to be myself. So at the end of each session, I usually feel really, really grateful that I get to have this space and share this vulnerable moment with these people. And I always want to pay this energy exchange forward. So I thought that a wonderful way to use this as a component of my design would be to let some of the money I receive flow as donations to help restore land or similar initiatives. But also as a conversation started and as a trade for this donation, to give my clients something I created out of this permaculture design. Maybe something grown on my window farm, cutting from my houseplants, or a fermentation project, maybe some worm castings. And so, I don't know, what a great opportunity to honor and share my resources. I have here some preservation, avoidment, and achievement goals. And through my observations, I organized my slides by scale of permanence. Using the scale of permanence, we can organize our observations and envision the potential impacts of any changes we'd like to make, climate being the hardest to change and hardest to reverse changes in, and aesthetics being the easiest. I started with my base map so you have an idea of where we are. So this is our main street that we live in. It's a very small apartment, just one bedroom, and we don't have any outdoor space. This back area is a fire exit, so we cannot block it or put anything here. This is the area, this is the back. Sometimes we use it, but there's rats out here, so it's not, and we're not actually allowed to use it. There's a retired couple that lives in the apartment across the hall from us, always giving us gifts, and they're very sweet. And yeah, this is the general gist of it. For climate, Toronto has very pronounced seasons and very warm and humid summers. Landscape of Toronto, it's sculpted by glaciers, and there's a lot of ravine systems running through it. Look at all these. Water source for Toronto is Lake Ontario, and it's one of the 5 Great Lakes, and it provides water for 9 million people, yet it's one of the most threatened Great Lakes. In 2019 alone, just from the Humber River, which is this guy here, from the Humber River watershed, 44,000 metric tons of contaminated wastewater were discharged into the lake. And it's important for me to note that 21% of the world's surface fresh water is held in the Great Lakes. So the city treats tap water, making all tap water in Toronto drinkable, including the one that people water their lawns with. While at the same time, there is many First Nation communities that have no access to safe or clean drinking water to this day in 2022. Access and circulation in the apartment. I have highlighted some of the high traffic areas, which I think would be good placements for my components, and some of the routes that I take during in our neighborhood. I didn't go through a plant list here in vegetation. It's really just houseplants that I will probably use for propagation. But later on, I have a slide in which I go through the plant list for my friend Alex, who I'm helping design their terrace garden. We have a lot of microclimates in the apartment. Since we're south facing, the living room and the den get really hot, especially in the winter when the sun comes in deeply. And the north side of the apartment can be really cold. The north winds come through this hallway here, and they enter mainly the bedroom. The bedroom doesn't get any sun at all year, so it can be quite cold in here, which my partner actually enjoys a lot. And the other rooms are a little normal, but the kitchen and the bathroom are still way colder than the living room and the den. The pantry tends to be a little bit warmer than the kitchen, so I think it'd be great for fermentation projects. This is an old building, 1922 building, and the south views are not obstructed, but the north views, this is what we would see. So we have a view to our neighbor. The existing zones indoors, I divided by the percentage of productive time we spend at each. We spend most of our time in the living room and den, then in the kitchen, and then in the bedroom and washroom. The den is not utilized as much during the summer in the growing season while I'm gardening. In the winter, it is utilized, at least for me, more than the living room, since I do most of my studying in here. And this area we rarely access, unless we are going to our bikes. For zones in the neighborhood, daily it's this little strip here. This is an area where I park during the summer. This is a transit station, so it's nice and close. Some more shopping strips, extra shopping strips. This is where we go through a farmer's market. This is a great park, and our laundromat is here. For zones in the city, this is the area that you saw on the earlier slide. But for the city zones, I also have, this is where my friend Alex has a terrace, and this is who I'm gonna help grow some edibles and perennials. So she's located over here. I have another friend who I'm gonna help next year to design their garden. So that's not included in my plant list for this project, but it's a project for the future. And then for my job, I unfortunately have to travel to the other side of the city. So this is my job's home base. And this is also an area I frequent twice a week. It's the Ontario Food Terminal. This is where I get supplies for gardening projects. Human patterns, I have mentioned it. In the winter is a time of reflection. Summer, I work a lot, and I have broken down a little bit what happens on our day-to-day basis. For aesthetics and experience, there isn't much I would like to change in an apartment. We like a cozy feel to it. For gardens, I would like to talk about this since I do spend a lot of time in people's gardens in Toronto. This is mostly informed by European-style gardens, which plants will require a lot of attention and care and water, but they don't provide a lot of food for pollinators or any other bugs, like lawns. But trends are changing, and hopefully more people want to grow more and more pollinator-friendly plants and food in their lawns. I mean, just look how beautiful this garden we work in is. Sectors. So yeah, there is a lot of noise and light pollution from the main street coming into our apartment. Thankfully, that doesn't affect us in our bedroom. We do have, when it rains really hard, water can come in through these windows and cold gusts of wind as well. As I mentioned earlier, this is not an area that we can block. We cannot put any planters or anything like that here. We cannot block this fire exit. And these over here are little fire curtains, so we are not allowed to hang anything close to the windows, like any plants indoors or outdoors. Otherwise, these fire curtains would be blocked. Invisible sectors. We live in a rental apartment that at any point could be sold. Our landlord is looking to sell, so our lease could change. And this is also a very busy neighborhood, being gentrified, but there's also communities at risk a little bit more east from us, and there's a little bit of food insecurity over there. The cost of living in Toronto is very high, comparable to Vancouver and New York. I've gone through some of my boundaries over here. Some I have spoken about already, and for my resources. In this next slide, I have broken them down by the 9 forms of capital. But my main ones is that I have gardening knowledge, I have time in winter for projects, I have tattooing skills and ravine systems and parks. We have a surplus of houseplants, organic waste, and we use wood pellets for our cats, so that's a surplus of waste that I have to figure out what to do with. For the efficiency, sometimes I lack motivation and energy, and we haven't engaged with the community much, and I don't have a lot of time and energy in the growing season. Some of the strengths and weaknesses are discussed in the resources, surpluses, and deficiencies in the previous slides, but I think that there are opportunities to learn more about vegetable gardenings and build confidence and improve my mental health through this process. There's threats of just being kicked out at any point from this building if it gets sold, and we also depend on the city to provide all of our water and energy. I have overlaid here most of my maps so that I could analyze where it would be best to place my components. So these 2 areas, which I spoke about earlier, are high traffic. This could be good placement for high maintenance components. The living room would be perfect for starting seeds, growing anything. And a window farm would actually be a great component to shade a bit of that winter sun from coming in and making the living room a little bit more bearable during the winter. The pantry would be great for fermentation projects. And this kitchen corner is not accessed too much. We don't walk a lot through it, so I think this would be a great place to put a composting system. So here we go. Yes, window farm here indeed. Tattoo trades would happen in the living room. Compost system over here. Composting for a vermicompost could deal with our kitchen waste, while there's a special kind of bokashi system that could deal with our cats' droppings, and probably use the fertilizer for that for houseplants versus the fertilizer for the vermicompost for the window farm. And I think that since the window farm will take some water, I would like to place a little water sack in the shower to get some of that water that comes out at first while we wait for it to get a little warm, which is not too long, maybe just 30 seconds, but it's enough water. My components in the neighborhood and my new desired zones. So there's a community garden over here that I hope I can access. So now this zone 2 has expanded to visit this frequently, and zone 3 has expanded to visit this volunteering garden that is actually based on permaculture principles. And zone 4 has expanded to include Tommy Thompson Park to be able to volunteer with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority in this area, as well as the Toronto Region Conservation Authority also doesn't work in the ravine system, so it'd be great to volunteer there. And there's also a lot of little libraries in our neighborhood, more than in most areas in Toronto. So I think that that would be a great resource to leave some pamphlets sharing initiatives I found and maybe just tickle the interest of some of my neighbors. And another component that I think would be great is to do some learning, maybe engage in some salsa dancing or horticulture classes online at home. I have here also added my friend's garden, Alex, who I will help design her terrace, and this would be a great way for me to be able to grow something that I can grow at home. I have here gone through the nutrient cycles and social cycles in my components, and also highlighted the external inputs. This is the plant list for my friend Alex's. She is east facing on the 9th floor. It's a bit windy. It won't get a lot of sun, so you might not be familiar with some of these pollinator-friendly species that are for shade, but I think that she would love them. We'll also try to grow some edibles, and maybe a variety of allium, some wild strawberries. This is not her whole balcony. She has a lot more space. And here I have broken down my implementation steps. A lot of the things are going to happen during the winter since I have time. Like, a lot of projects are going to be started then, but also certain things can only happen during the growing season, like the community garden. Maintenance, I have broken down what things, certain components will need maintenance more often. Obviously, I could have broken down the components of my meditation and my mental health, but I like more simple presentations, so I've only broken down the most important ones that could be useful for other people in the program. For evaluation, I won't read all of this, but I think that this process was really insightful for me. The observation portion of this project was the most helpful. I didn't realize that I had so many resources around me and so many opportunities to create and share. I love sharing, and I love inspiring people through action. I think that I don't walk the talk most of the times, and so I'm hoping that this project will allow me to do more of that. And I think that I have hit a lot of my goals with these leverage techniques that I found. So I'm really looking forward to enact them and put them in action. I'm really grateful for the Permaculture Women's Guild and for my mentor, Becky Ellis. So thank you.